This would obviously be a huge victory in a sense for Russia, because it would allow Moscow to avoid Western sanctions and also increase the trade with the partners. However, we did not really. I don't think that BRICS has been the platform that where the countries, the respective countries, have achieved much in that sense.
The UN Secretary General has told Vladimir Putin that a just peace is needed to end the Ukraine war. We'll start with that topic in this hour. It's appearing alongside Mr. Putin at a BRICS summit in the Russian city of Kazan. Antonio Guterres called on the Russian leader to agree a peace deal in line with the UN Charter, international law, and the UN General Assembly resolutions.
We must strengthen and update the machinery of peace. This includes reforms to make the United Nations Security Council reflective of today's world. We need peace in Ukraine, a just peace in line with UN Charter, international law, and General Assembly resolutions. We need peace in Sudan, with all parties silencing their guns and committing to a path towards sustainable peace. Everywhere, we must uphold the values of the UN Charter, the rule of law, and the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of all states.
Just trying to visualize President Putin's face as Antonio Guterres was reading that out. And those remarks came after President Xi Jinping claimed on Wednesday that China and fellow BRICS member Brazil have put forward a peace plan for the war in Ukraine. Well, Natia Seskuria is an associate fellow at the Royal United Services Institute and professor in Russian politics at Chatham House. We've been speaking, and she told me what this does for Putin on the world stage.
The PR value of this summit is quite high for Russia, because what President Putin wanted to demonstrate to the world is that Russia is not isolated. Russia is doing well at the diplomatic stage. And Putin has had his moment on the geopolitical stage, a rather rare moment, I would say, because we haven't really seen much international engagements happening in Russia. I think most importantly and most controversial one was the UN Secretary General who attended the summit, and he has received much criticism. Russian media has been advertising this summit quite heavily and has been promoting this idea that it is a major diplomatic success for Russia. And I think this has both domestic and international consumption. And President Putin is indeed trying to demonstrate that sanctions are failing. And Russia is not suffering at all as a result of the Western measures. And quite contrary, Russia still has allies. And as you mentioned, there were representatives of 36 countries in Kazan. And this has been quite a significant PR move for Vladimir Putin.
But if you look at what the leaders of the biggest countries have said, so President Xi of China, President Lula of Brazil, and Prime Minister Modi of India, none of them was explicit in their support for what Russia is doing. In fact, President Xi and Lula talked about no escalation of fighting, and Modi said we want dialogue and diplomacy, not war. How much of a blow do you think that might have been to President Putin?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it was probably expected, because these leaders have, this is not the first time that they have been trying to promote the idea that there should be some kind of peaceful resolution achieved. There was some sort of superficial discussion about the Ukraine issue, the Ukraine war, but I think these sort of statements as well as the discussions were quite superficial, in a sense that I don't expect that there was any sort of even behind the scenes. We don't of course know what kind of conversations were there, but I don't think that there was much agreement or much discussion about the actual resolution of the conflict. So I think overall, Putin has had his moment at the global stage, and he has been able to basically reiterate once again that the West is trying to weaken Russia, but this is not a successful attempt so far.
And if this Kazan meeting of an expanded BRICS was supposed to usher in an alternative platform for international payments and not to be so dependent on the US dollar, well, where is the evidence that this is happening? Because countries like China and India, two giants of global population and of global trade, still have tariffs on each other, and there isn't enough trade within those BRICS countries to build up a proper alternative payment system at the moment, is there?
Yes, I think one of the main aims and what Russia has been pushing for quite specifically was the issue of the creation of the new payment system that could serve as an alternative to the SWIFT network. And this would obviously be a huge victory in a sense for Russia, because it would allow Moscow to avoid Western sanctions and also increase the trade with the partners. However, we did not really. I don't think that BRICS has been the platform that where the countries, the respective countries, have achieved much in that sense.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at some of the countries that are waiting to be full members, including the likes of Saudi Arabia, of course, Ethiopia on the expanded list, the United Arab Emirates, etc. I mean, what really unites those countries together? I ask this question because you can see why some want to get cozy with Russia and China because they're upset with Washington and the EU, but others are very friendly with those Western countries and want to do more, not less trade with them.
Yes, we have seen that Turkey, Azerbaijan, Malaysia, for example, have formally applied to become members. President Putin mentioned that there are several other nations that are interested in joining. I mean, this group of nations that were represented in Kazan this week are differ quite a lot in terms of their interests. Some are seeking indeed closer partnerships with Russia, China, and likes due to the economic benefits that they may receive, while others are trying to in a way balance the lack of close partnerships with the Western allies by having the alternative options. So in that sense, I think there was quite a range of countries represented in Russia this week.
And that was Natia Seskuria, Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute and Professor in Russian Politics at Chatham House.
The Pact for the Future includes important steps on disarmament, including the first multilateral agreement on nuclear disarmament in more than a decade, and steps that address the weaponization of outer space and the use of lethal autonomous weapons. Across the board, we need peace. We need peace in Gaza, with an immediate ceasefire, the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, the effective delivery of humanitarian aid without obstacles, and we need to make irreversible progress to end the occupation and establish the two-state solution as it was recently reaffirmed once again by a UN General Assembly resolution. Of peace. This includes reforms to make the United Nations Security Council. We need peace in Lebanon, with an immediate cessation of hostilities, moving to the full implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701. We need peace in Ukraine, a just peace in line with UN Charter, international law, and General Assembly resolutions. We need peace in Sudan, with all parties silencing their guns and committing to a path towards sustainable peace. Those were the messages I have delivered to the high-level segment of the General Assembly in September in New York.
Наша страна использует свой нейтральный статус для продвижения